Hey, everybody, Max Boltman here alongside the Athletics' Corey Prummett and Scott Wheeler and Flow Hockey's Chris Peters for another episode of the Athletic Hockey Show Prospect Series. Today, we are diving into the USA and Canada World Junior roster debates, and we've got a lot to get into here. So we're going to start with Team Canada here. And here's how we did this. So what we're trying to do here is create a depth chart. Canada in particular, has so many contingencies they have to work through, guys, with players that they will have available, players that they would like to get and maybe don't know if they're going to get. And then there's ultimately the pool they're going to end up with. We could spend 4 hours going through contingencies. So we're going to try to keep it somewhat tight. But the end goal here is to produce maybe not a projected roster, but a projected depth chart for kind of to show where we stand on all these guys and how we would, if we were Team Canada, how we would have them rank. We'll do the same thing for USA. Thankfully, a little bit simpler on that end of things. Are going to be some visual components to this. So if you're listening via podcast and you want to see some of these depth charts that we've kind of starter depth charts we've created, feel free to check us out on YouTube as always. But let's dive right in here, guys. And starting with the Team Canada forwards, there is some agreement. Fortunately, 5 of everybody's top 6 is consensus. Gavin McKenna, Berkeley Catton, Beckett Seneca, Porter Martone, Michael Misa. That's the good news. The bad news, as we're going to run into over and over again, we have no idea how many of those players Canada is actually going to have available to them. So we're going to get to that as we roll here. But let's just start with this. Berkeley Catton and Beckett Seneca and Michael Misa all are in the NHL. If there's one of these players that you feel Canada is least likely to get, Corey, who is it?
It has to be Seneca, right? I mean, he's been good for the Ducks. The Ducks are winning games. He's playing regular minutes, which Catton and Misa are not for the Sharks. Misa's hurt right now, but even when he was healthy, he wasn't. I would be surprised right now if Seneca was available.
All right. So given that we all have him high on the list, I think we don't need to spend a ton of time on him. We're going to put him on the final depth chart, I think, because we would agree that, or if you guys feel strongly that we don't, we cannot. But I think we all agree he's going to be high on the wish list for Canada. But we're not going to spend a ton of time on him because we don't think it's super realistic. When it comes to Michael Misa, Corey, there's a little more of a debate here because, as you said, he's been injured, more in and out of the lineup. What do you think the odds are Canada gets their hands on Misa, Scott?
I think the odds are good that they get their hands on Misa. I think based off of the way that he's looked in the NHL, how little he has played when he has played, and just the general feel around him and his role on that team and his fit on that team, even once he's healthy, I don't think he's a every night guy for them. I don't think he's going to be used prominently for them. And I think it makes a lot of sense to send him, have him play a top 6 role for Team Canada and be a big part of this Team Canada. They obviously didn't take him a year ago. He's likely in the NHL next year. So this is kind of Misa's year to be on this team and to have his World Junior experience and be a go-to guy. So I would bet, as we sit here today, I would bet that Michael Misa is playing for Canada at the World Juniors if he's healthy.
And what would you do, Chris, with Berkeley Catton as the Seattle Kraken? It's a little different situation. Kraken, again, a team that's going to try to compete for a playoff spot, and Catton's in their lineup, but maybe not at the very top of it.
Yeah, I think the advantage for Seattle is that they've already been through this process before. They did it with Shane Wright and made the decision that they made. And I think you look at Catton right now, no goals yet in 14 games, but they did put him past the 10 game threshold. He's probably his ice time has been a little bit all over the map. It's been quite a while since he's gotten on the score sheet. To me, it makes all the sense in the world to allow him the opportunity to go to the World Juniors, to be a top center, a top 6 center on this team, a guy that, is going to be relied upon to produce and allow him to build that confidence and then make a decision after that about ultimately where he should go next. And, he is one of those guys where it feels like he's done pretty much all he can do in junior hockey, but coming off of a World Junior Championship last year where he had 1 assist, I would have to imagine that Berkeley would also like the opportunity for some redemption with a team that has legitimate gold medal hopes.
Anyone not think Canada is going to have Berkeley Catton available to them?
Kraken do have some injury issues, and that'd be the only thing I'd be thinking about there, depending on the health of their roster. I mean, they just bumped Shane right to the wing on that line to have Catton center, that third line. So I think there's a chance.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's say Catton is in this mix there. So if we've got 5 of the 6 figured out, and granted Seneca may or may not be available, we think probably not. the rotation of other players that this group of selectors kind of rotated through has a lot of variance, right? So Corey has Michael Misa at center, and that opens up a spot in his top 6 for TJ Ginla. Scott has Michael Misa on the wing with another NHL player, Ben Kindle, at center. And that's actually probably the segue we should go to next. Do we think the Pittsburgh Penguins, right now, against all odds, holding down a playoff spot, Corey, is Ben Kindle going to be available to Team Canada?
And kind of similar situation to Canton, they have a lot of injuries too, which has resulted in Kindle getting significant ice time. If they were fully healthy, maybe not. I think they would be a little bit more open to that conversation. But Kindle's playing a lot of minutes right now for that team, and he's been on the top power play at times. I'd be surprised at this point if with the information we have now, if they loaned him out. But that could change in a couple of weeks.
The thing with Kindle too is it's not that long ago that we were coming out of the World Junior Summer Showcase, and I think Ben Kindle was on the outside looking in of this roster. So he has transformed where he's at in terms of just an NHL prospect in the last little bit. And we talked about it on the show a couple of weeks ago. Clearly the Pittsburgh Penguins were in the right spot when they took him where they did. But I don't think Team Canada in August is 4 months ago. I don't think Team Canada viewed him as a piece of the puzzle just 4 months ago.
Fun question, just tangent. Is there anybody that went before Kindle in the draft that you would take Kindle over right now?
I have him higher on my depth chart than Brady Martin, who I'm a big believer in.
I think I'm probably taking him over Brady.
I'd probably take him over Brady, and I'd probably take him over Murtka.
What about O'Brien? I think you have him over O'Brien as well, Corey.
Yeah, but where I have O'Brien, you guys can show my depth chart if you want, just for context. O'Brien is going to be one of those weird ones when you're putting together a roster, is that I don't think he fits in a bottom 6. He's not a penalty killer. He's not going to be in those tough defensive situations. But if there's a middle 6 power play opportunity available for Team Canada, then all of a sudden I think he's in that mix. You talk about Seneca coming out of that second line right wing. That could be a spot for Jake O'Brien, quite frankly, in this lineup. But I feel like if you're looking for him to be a 4th liner on this team, I'm not sure that's quite the fit.
Yeah.
And I think that's incumbent on the conversation that we just had of if let's say they don't get 2 of Catton, Misa, Kindle, for example, then suddenly I think Jake is more firmly in the mix of what the middle 6 of this roster looks like. But if they're fully loaded, it's tough to imagine where he fits.
To Scott's point, Kindle is in the top 9 for 3 of us on our depth chart here. The one that doesn't have him on is Chris, and Chris omitted him because he doesn't think there's any chance Ben Kindle's going to be available to Canada, right? So to your point, Scott, about how Kindle has elevated himself, that is pretty clear in these projections. So the names that I want to dig into as we talk about what to do in the top 6 of Canada, Corey, I completely agree with your point about O'Brien, because I ranked him, if you want to put my chart up here, I put him as the number 2 center, mainly because I think that's where he fits, right? And so I don't know that I would take him over Ben Kindle. I don't think I would. So maybe I'm kind of misunderstanding the assignment. But if I'm thinking, who do I want playing with Michael Misa and Porter Martone, it's a playmaker like Jake O'Brien. So I know, Chris, you have Brady Martin in that spot. And so like there's a lot of debates that you can have about how to structure this top 6. And so to try to keep it orderly, let's start here. How about, Chris, why don't you tell us why you would have Brady Martin?
We're talking about depth chart, not necessarily line combinations. And I think that the thing is that I think Hockey Canada would view Brady Martin as a more critical piece to their team than Jake O'Brien at this point, because of the versatility that he provides, the physicality that he provides, and so like, would I necessarily have him as the second line center on this team? Not necessarily. And I think that's the interesting thing about depth charts versus line charts is that there are values to what a player brings that, especially in short tournaments, that I feel like are more critical. And I think for me, Martin delivers on a lot of things that aren't necessarily scoring. He can score. He had probably the goal of the season in the OHL so far this year, but
hasn't scored other than that goal.
That's true. But it's one of those things that for the versatility that he provides, there's a huge benefit to his overall skill set. So I think he's going to play significant minutes. Like there's a chance that, the way Canada utilizes its second line, depending on what that is and who they get from the NHL, that maybe there's, maybe they have like their tone setting line, which could be their third line or their fourth line or whatever, start a lot of games for them, set the tone kind of thing. And I think that's what Brady Martin brings and why he's so high on my list.
Corey, you have T.J. Ginla in the top 6, and it's not at center because, again, it all depends on how you slot players positionally. But why don't you make the case for T.J. Ginla?
And Teach has played center. That's junior hockey. You're gonna have a lot of centers playing wing on a Team Canada.
I think Brady's a winger for this team if he's on the team. Like they just have too many natural centers, and they've used Brady as a winger.
Yeah, he probably doesn't have like the high end sense to be a top 2 line center on this team, from what I've seen. Maybe like a 4th line center or something like that. But in terms of Iginla, I mean, since he's been playing this year, he's been one of the very best players in junior hockey. He's got to be well over a goal per game right now, something like 2 points per game. He's been dynamic for Kelowna. And this is a guy who was a very important part of this age group at the U18 Worlds when they won gold. I think they're going to look to this guy for his skill, his finish, his compete level, and this is his time. This is his age group, and I expect for a 19-year-old with his talent level that he will play a very prominent role in this lineup.
The left side is where things really open up for this team too. Like you start to look at all of our depth charts. You've got Catton, Kindle, Luchenko, Reshny, Coots, O'Brien as centers. You've got Brady Martin as a center on a couple of our lineups. The right side, you've got Martone, potentially Beckett Seneke, Michael Hage, Justin Carbonneau, Liam Greentree. The left side after McKenna, that's where I think the jobs are to win. And Tej, I sort of agree with Corey here. I think Tej is well positioned to be one of those guys as a left shot winger behind McKenna somewhere.
Yeah, and the next guy I have after him is Denoye, but that was a struggle to figure out where to put Caleb Denoye. I think it's the same issue with Brady Martin. They're both really talented players. But they haven't played well this season. So it's like I like Denoye because of the size, the PK ability, and I think there's a way for him to affect the game. But I can understand. I think Scott, you're about to say you left him off. Like I completely understand leaving him off too. He hasn't played well this year.
Yeah, I just think push comes to shove, you start to look at the centers or even the left shot guys, the left shot centers that can move over. I think we've seen more from Braden Coots and Cole Reshny and some of those guys than Desnoyers. And I think you've got guys like Cole Beaudoin that are going to be and Jet Luchenko that are going to be on the roster as returnees. So I don't see with the way that Desnoyers has looked early on with the injuries, with the wrist, coming off the wrist, I just don't see why he's on the team over any number of those guys.
And we could have a similar conversation about Caden Lindstrom. Corey's the only one that put Caden Lindstrom on his 6 lines deep depth chart here.
Really? Good God.
Caden was one of my very last cuts.
Absolutely.
Caden and Sam O'Reilly and Desnoyers, those were kind of my 3 last forwards that I didn't include here. Has Caden shown more than if you're looking at the very bottom of my depth chart, has Caden shown more than Merrick Vanacker this year?
I mean, not offensively, not even close. I guess I had Lindstrom as like a 4th line wing.
Yep.
And I guess my argument there is high end speed, high end physicality. Like for a 10 to 11 minute a night guy in those tough games against US, Sweden, I think he will have a lot of value. But if he gets more than 2 points in that tournament, which is what he's got in the year so far, I think that'd be hoping for too much.
Outside of those big 5, the real consensuses here are Cole Beaudoin and Michael Hage. Everyone has both of them somewhere in their top 12, and it's typically in the bottom 6. So those guys, I think, as we have our debate, we don't need to spend a ton of time on because there's pretty broad agreement here. I think the guys that are going to be interesting, and let's start with Justin Carbonneau out in the queue. This is a guy who is fairly high on my list. I think fairly high on Scott's list. Corey, I think you have him toward the very bottom of your depth chart.
Yeah, hockey sense minor concern there for me. I think with Carbonneau, you love the skill, you love the tenacity, you love the shot. But then the question starts becoming, Scott mentioned all the really good right shots on this team, particularly the right wingers that you're going to have eligible. Guys like Martin, guys like Hage, Coots could be a winger on this team. And I start going through all these options and I start asking where does he really fit? Who are you really leaving behind? Are you really going to leave Luchenko behind for him? Are you really leaving Brady Martin behind for him? And I just don't see it. I feel like he's going to be a guy that, unless they lose all the NHL guys, I feel like he's going to be in the conversation to the end and then ultimately gets cut.
Luchenko's one I really struggled with because I absolutely loved what he did for Team Canada at his own U18s. And I think that history tends to translate. I think Hockey Canada is going to value that. I think they're going to see him as a guy that they can trust, even if it does end up being a fourth line role. Like, that's really valuable. I just struggled to find, yeah, right. He can kill penalties, but I just struggled to find, like, where do I put him? It would have had to come at the expense of Desnoyers or Brady Martin for me. And I don't know if it's recency or what, but I just couldn't kind of get myself there.
It's a tough one because I agree with you. Like, as a hockey player, the last like 12 months for Luchenko have not been overly inspiring. I know he had that really good camp with the Flyers a year ago, but since then, you've kind of been wishing for a little bit more offense out of this player. I still think, like you said, the U18s loom large here a little bit. I feel like he didn't have a great U18s, and his World Juniors last year was just okay. I feel like he could be like a Chris Bigra type of situation here, where like even though he's a returning guy, he could still easily get cut. But I feel like because he has that strong track record, and because you're not really hoping to put him in a scoring role, you're thinking 11th, 12th, 13th forward on this roster, I would still find a way to get him in here. Keep in mind, this age group, when they played the U18s, they only had two centers they could trust. It was Beaudoin and Luchenko. So I do think at the end of the day, he makes it. Is he going to play a lot of minutes on this team? I wouldn't go that far.
A couple other bubble guys that are interesting. One of them is Cole Reshny. And Chris, I know he didn't end up on your list that we're going to, when we display it, he won't be there, but I know you meant to have him on there. So we'll just assume that like Cole Reshny's on everybody's list here. But it's still like the role is interesting. I put him on like kind of a checking third line. Again, I know I probably did a little more of a lineup than I was supposed to, but it's also a guy who could very easily be the extra, Scott.
I think Reshny just fits on any roster. He can play center. He's excellent in the faceoff circle. He's one of the more reliable players in this age cohort. He can check. He's plays with pace. He's now playing with a lot more pace. And then he's got the skill game and the playmaking, and he was a standout at the Summer Showcase this summer and one of the only standouts at the Summer Showcase this summer. So I didn't really worry about when I was considering my sort of roster here, I didn't really worry about Reshny. Like, Reshny wasn't a guy who felt like a bubble guy. Guys like Boisvert and Vanacker and O'Brien felt like bubble guys to me. Reshny still feels to me like a player who's going to be on this team. I think he was sort of penciled into this team coming out of the Summer Showcase after the way that he performed there. And he's had a good, he hasn't had a great year at North Dakota, but he's still a point per game and an important part of that team. And I just think he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. Like, you could play him with skill guys a little bit higher, or you could play him on your third or fourth line with guys like Luchenko and Beaudoin, and I think he could fit there. There's a lot of utility for Reshny at an event like this. I think he's probably in the mix.
So I really like Reshny, but this is why I would put Desnoyers over Reshny. I feel like if we were in the summer right now, we hadn't started the season yet, we presumed Desnoyers was going to come back healthy. Would anybody here have put Reshny over Desnoyers for this team?
No, but it's November and that didn't happen.
No, right. But Desnoyers played 7 games. It's not like he's played a full quarter of a year and he's played poorly. It's been 7 games, one of which he left like at the beginning of the game due to injury. So I'm hesitant, and there's similar player styles. Desnoyers is bigger, but they're both kind of these two-way, hardworking forwards. So I look at this and I'm like, yeah, Desnoyers hasn't been good, but I feel like what you're hoping to get out of Reshny, you can get out of him. And I feel like the offense is going to be close. And I just value this player more. I feel like even he has a better track record too. So anyways, that was my argument there. I don't think it's unreasonable to take Reshny instead of Desnoyers, but that was my line of thinking.
I have both, but as I was trying to figure out how to slot him, I was just thinking like it's hard to put the one above the other when the one is playing so well and arguably against better competition. So, that's one that I think we'll debate as we get a little bit deeper into this. The other player I want to talk about, just as we figure out who the bubble is here, is Liam Greentree. I left him off. I think, Corey, you have him pretty low. Scott, you have him right at the fringe. Chris, you have him, I think, third right wing for you. Do you want to make the case for Liam Greentree?
I mean, I think it's hard. It's hard to make the case. It's more of a positional thing. Like, I think the thing is you want some guys to be playing in their spots. You want them to be kind of in the more natural positions. I think he can play on either side. He has, scoring ability, size, those things. I think the reason that, a lot of us view him and that's, yes, he's higher on my list, but I really think that a lot of these guys, as we get outside of the top 7 or 8 forwards are fairly interchangeable for a lot of ways. And he's one of those guys where, the track record's there in terms of the production. He was one of the top players in the OHL last season. He wasn't available this summer, so like that, we didn't get a chance to see him in that environment. I think if you go back to his under 18s, he had a hard time getting on the ice. And I think that'll absolutely stay in the memory of Hockey Canada, which is why I'm sure, you guys are kind of more on the fence about him. But I also was looking at kind of some of the different things and making sure that you have, some good size, but with some skill against a U.S. team in particular, or a Sweden team that is going to have some of that. I think the U.S. team is going to be tougher. They're not going to be as big overall. But I think he's one of those guys that he's really tricky to figure out, and he's often leaving you wanting more, yet you look up and he's always producing. So to me, that's you need scoring. He does that. That's why he's in for me.
He's been a really impactful junior player, and he's got the size. His pace does worry me.
Correct.
And
yes.
I'm worried if I was in Team Cat's position, not worried, but I'm thinking if I was in the position, I feel like they're going to pick him apart in the way that Team Canada picked apart like a guy like a Michael Dalcol, for example, where they're wondering, he's a great scorer at the OHL level, but when the game gets really fast against USA and Sweden, is he going to be able to keep up? And I kind of feel like the top, maybe as like a 13th forward, that's kind of what he was at his Hlinka, for example. I could see him in that type of role. Top 9, I would imagine they want a little bit more.
The one ripple for Greentree is that despite the fact that he has played exclusively as a right wing in his junior career, he is a left shot. So I don't know how comfortable he would be moving back to his natural side, but the left wing is a potential option for him, I think, if they see more of a glaring hole there than they do on the right side.
All right, so here's where I think we are based on that debate. So line 1, if everyone is available, McKenna, Catton, Seneca. Second line, Iginla, Misa, Martone. Third line, Baudouin, Ben Kindle, Michael Hage. Fourth line, Cole Reshny, Jet Luchenko, Justin Carbonneau. And then right at the bubble, the fifth line guys, Jake O'Brien, Caleb Denoyer, Brady Martin. And the sixth line of guys who I think there's varying degrees of advocacy for, but just couldn't get enough. Merrick Vanacker, Braden Coots, Liam Greentree, and then just cut completely from our conversation, basically, were Sasha Bovair, Caden Lindstrom, Sam O'Reilly, and Roger McQueen.
It's a lot of good players not on there.
Yeah, I think in our conversations, probably the most contentious ones were Jake O'Brien and Brady Martin. Those are really good players, really unique players. And it's frustrating because we couldn't find a spot on the lineup for them. But 2, based on how the NHL availabilities go, there are clear scenarios for either of them actually being on the team.
Right. I mean, if you don't get Seneca and I think you probably get Misa, but let's say you don't get Misa, all of a sudden, the offensive argument for Jake O'Brien, who's putting up 2 points a game in the OHL right now, I think it's really strong, Scott.
Yes, I just think we talked about it off the top of the show. I just think it's going to be tricky for O'Brien on the whole. If they're fully loaded, if they get even the majority of their NHL guys, where does he fit as a 18-year-old who's not a checker and is a skill guy, but may not play as a skill guy on this roster? So I think it's all about trickle down. One domino turns into another domino, suddenly there's, I think, an opportunity for Jake O'Brien to play very high in this lineup. But when we started to put together our depth chart, it's just, forget that we've cut Boisvert and Lindstrom and O'Reilly, and we didn't even O'Reilly, who plays for the Hunters, and we didn't even mention Roger McQueen in our previous chat. Even some of the guys on this 5th and 6th line that we've technically included here are also likely to get cut here. So at least if they get the majority of their NHL guys back. So there's a lot that needs to be sorted. They're going to need to find out those commitments from NHL clubs soon. We'll get to the defense, but we heard today that Zane Parekh has been confirmed as someone who's going to be playing for Team Canada. And I think those are going to start to trickle out now. Canada's announcing its roster as we record this in about 2.5-3 weeks here. So the runway here is shrinking for some of these guys to continue to make a case. Certainly O'Brien has made a very compelling case. So has Merrick Vanacker, who we've hardly discussed, playing with Jake O'Brien on that top line in Brantford. So a lot of very, very good players, as always. Caden Lindstrom was
I think the
top
defense
5.
is going to be a lot less contentious than this.
You are correct about that. And we will go to that next. So let's take a break right there. We'll come back with Canada's Blue Line. All right, we're back, and we're going to go now to the Team Canada defense. Fortunately, a lot less moving parts on that one. We all agreed on the top 4D. We all agreed on the 3rd and 4 right D in some order. The 4 that we all agree on up top: Sam Dickinson, Zane Parekh, Kashawn Aitchison, and Harrison Brunicky. The 3rd and 4 right D: Ben Danford, Keaton Verhoff. The questions, Chris, are which of those players up top will Canada actually get? It does sound like, based on reporting from Eric Francis on Wednesday, that Team Canada will get Zane Parekh. That's a huge sigh of relief for them. Will they get so lucky with San Jose and Sam Dickinson?
Well, I think they better hope to, because I think once you get past Sam Dickinson, there's a lot of uncertainty there. And I'm to the point where I'm like, I mean, I don't know. You might have to start looking at guys playing their offside and different things. Because as we kind of look towards the end, 2 of the guys, left shot guys they had in camp in the summer were Terrence Smith and Owen Protz. And I think they're both very solid junior defensemen. I think you could bring them. It just, are you going to play them a significant amount of minutes? But, you lose Sam Dickinson, and then you're pretty much certain to have one of those 2 guys. I think you're looking at Cam Reed being in that mix. So you're trying to find ways to get a little bit more out of your decor. And that's why I think like Keaton Verhoff all of a sudden looks more like a lock to be in there than maybe we would have thought otherwise, even though he's, a big right shot. So I think this is a situation, and really it showed up in the camp in the summer. We saw, Schaefer leaves and Dickinson leaves and all, the Parekh leaves, and then you're starting to play with that next tier, and it looks pretty not amazing when you're kind of getting to that depth. And it's an issue that we're going to talk about with Team USA as well, because I think that defensive depth is going to be something that's tough for them. But really down that left side, the way that it thins out is fairly dramatic to me.
So you mentioned Cam Reed. So that's a name that I debated strongly, and I didn't know where to land on him. I ended up going with Jackson Smith. Not that I necessarily feel great about it, but part of my logic was maybe the most, I guess, physically, stylistically similar to Sam Dickinson. When you talk about the skating, when you talk about, I don't know if he has quite as much offense as Sam Dickinson does, but that's where I went. But I think I was kind of on an island with that one, Corey.
I haven't liked Smith at all this year. I think Chris and I have talked about this off camera before. Like, I think at Penn State, he's been very average. I think you like the skill, you like the skating, you like the size. I think he fights the puck a little bit at that level. He basically hasn't killed a penalty all year. I thought his U18s were just good, not great last spring. Like, I think there will be other guys they will consider over him. I think he will be a really strong candidate for the team the following year, but I'd be a little surprised if he was on the team this year, even with these issues on defense that we're talking about.
I do think Smith has been better than the credit that Corey's giving him there, but I think the U18s loom large. Like, he had some tough moments at U18s, and they still played him. He still played 18, 19 minutes a night for that team. And I had him sort of further down as my sort of 5th left shot deep, because I think the options start to get pretty slim. But I think that U18s, especially that when it's the previous U18s, and you're not talking about a 19-year-old defenseman, you're still talking about an 18-year-old. I think that will loom large for Smith in the conversation. Like, they desperately, for example, on Cam Reed, who we started this conversation with, they desperately wanted Cam Reed there. They were very eager to get Cam Reed there, and Kitchener just played too long in the playoffs for that to be a reality for Team Canada. And I think that also looms large. Cam Reed didn't go there and have an opportunity to show whether he was going to play poorly, but they felt that if Cam Reed had been there, that he would have been a huge, huge part of that U18 team. And I think they're high, just based off of that, I think they're quite high on Cam. He's also been better. Like we talked about him a couple weeks ago on the show, just sort of I think we had a sort of one-off quick conversation about Reed getting off to a slow start a couple of weeks ago. He's been outstanding basically since the moment we had that conversation in Kitchener. Like he's been playing 28, 29 minutes a night. And he's been one of the better players in the OHL over the last month. So I think Cam sort of his game coming back around and how well-rounded he is. He felt for me after Dickinson and Aitchison, like he's right there amongst the lefties.
I don't think we had a conversation. I'm pretty much sure you were the one who just kind of slammed him in that when we did that.
Possible too.
We mentioned how Sam O'Reilly didn't get into the conversation for us, and I feel like just given the high end names that we cut, I don't think anyone here was really like contending that he needs to be in here. But I feel like if we're talking about like a London night that the Hunters might try to sneak in here, I feel like on D, there's a way they might try and get Jared Woolley in there, just given the bleakness on the left side, especially if they don't get Dickinson, where you got the guy with size who competes, who's putting up pretty good offense this year in the OHL. I don't love him, but we're talking about some pretty, like I said, it's thin on the left side, and I could absolutely see them bringing Woolley especially if they don't get Dickinson.
Yeah, I'm with you. Actually, when I saw that on there, I was, I guess a little bit surprised, but it makes a ton of sense. The more I thought about it as I looked at it, and you're right, he has had a really, really strong season. I mean, 6'5", he's looked pretty good. But yeah, I mean, like, the one guy that I would like for us to talk a little bit more about, because I didn't have him on mine, and I think all the rest of you did, was Xavier Villeneuve.
Yep.
Does the availability of Parekh at all impact that decision for you?
Yes. He's not. They're not bringing him now.
Yeah. That's kind of what I thought.
For what it's worth, I think that's a mistake. And we went through this entire process last year. Suddenly, if Dickinson's not there and you pat yourself on the back for having Parekh, you're still one injury away from having Harrison Brunicky or Cam Reed or whoever else running one of your power plays, which works at the junior level, will not necessarily work at the OHL or at the World Junior level.
But if Parekh gets injured, they can always fly him in, right?
In theory, but just bring that guy. We've been through that before with Jaeger Furcus flying in and then sitting in the just bring the insurance. Have him as your 7th or 8D. You get to bring 8D to the tournament. I think there's a role for a guy like Villeneuve as a 7 or 8D on this team from day one. And speaking of U18s, another player who was excellent for them, even at 5-on-5 at U18s. Like I think it's if you're going to bring Jared Woolley and Owen Protz and these guys to pet, like we've seen that not work again and again. Like those guys just aren't built for the World Junior level. I could list off 10 players in that mold who've played for Hockey Canada at the last several World Juniors who have struggled and haven't been able to elevate. I don't think you have that same issue if you bring Xavier Villeneuve as a power play stopgap guy. Like
you thought he was excellent at 5-on-5 in the Worlds? Yes.
I don't know that he played
play
that much at 5-on-5. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like a power play guy for them by the end. In the important games.
Yeah, early in the tournament, I thought he was excellent. He was one of their better defensemen.
I love him, but I just didn't see that personally. But agree, disagree. That's fine.
Let's talk about the name that Chris had. That he had Terrence Smith, and this could be somewhat of a solution to this answer with a little bit more size. Chris, do you want to make a pitch for Terrence Smith?
I mean, not a strong one, really. I think that's kind of what we came. That's kind of what we came back to is, and to Scott's point, I think some of the things that he said, like, so in my depth chart, did I go with what I would have done or what I think Hockey Canada would do? And I think you're going to err the way that traditionally they have erred on the side of who's got a little more size, who's got a little more pop. And really, Smith this year, like I said, he was involved at the summer showcase. Didn't necessarily impact the game in a significant way, but he's a point per game defenseman right now in the WHL. He's captaining the Silvertips. A player like him maybe fits the mold a little bit more of what we've traditionally seen them bring. But that's the thing is, like, I think as you get further down, and this is kind of what I was alluding to when we talked about Sam Dickinson, the decisions become not just difficult, they become not great in terms of, like, you don't want to get into that situation because you don't want to be debating between these players that are kind of fringe World Junior players. They're very good junior players. They're professional prospects. Are they a World Junior player right now? That's the question that you have to answer. And that's where players like Villeneuve, others that can maybe fit into a role, like in a power play situation or a way to present some offense, that could help them. But yeah, I mean, so as I made the left side, I was like, gosh, I almost just want to start listing more guys. And that's why guys like Jared Woolley, Villeneuve, as the other guys that are in the mix here, still make a lot of sense to me as well, because I don't think you can make a strong case for any single one of them.
I just looked it up. Villeneuve played the third fewest even strength minutes for Team Canada in the medal round game.
Corey will find a receipt no matter what he has to do, where the time,
Yeah.
he is going to find
The only
receipts.
receipt checkers better than Corey are at Costco. So that's
who also didn't play for Team Canada at last year's World Juniors that they brought? Bo Akey, who they brought to play 3 minutes a night. And then when a power play quarterback got injured, suddenly they had no options to run either of their 2 power plays.
Yeah.
I like Xavier. He's on my depth chart. I just didn't think he was good.
Everyone's welcome to
He was
vouch
straight
for
from last
Jared
year's
Woolley
UAT.
or Owen Protz, but Jared Woolley and Owen Protz could end up being Bo Akey and playing 3-4 minutes a night. And then at least
They're worse
if you
than him,
have,
I would argue.
Yeah.
I would agree. At least if you have a Villeneuve, you know exactly what his utility is. You know when to insert him into the lineup. You know what role he's playing. Why bring another? Like they've got. You were talking about size. They've got plenty of size. If they get Dickinson, they've got Dickinson. They've got Harrison Brunick's not mean, but he's 6'2", 6'3". Keaton Verhoff could be on this roster. Ben Danford is one of the thickest kids in junior hockey. Like they don't have a shortage of that. And I think if you're doubling down on that, you're making the same mistakes that they've made in recent tournaments here in terms of constructing the blue line. Like they need to bring guys who can move pucks, who can potentially run the power play. And I don't think Zane Parekh gives them a free pass on bringing those types to round out the rest of the roster.
Well, that brings probably a more interesting conversation than Villeneuve is Verhoff. I thought coming out of the Hlinka Gretzky, he's on the outside looking in. 2 months into his freshman year, where he's been pretty strong for North Dakota, I would be more inclined, I think, to bring him and to give him a real chance to play on this team. Because I think he's shown he can move pucks very well at the college level. And I don't know if he's going to play big minutes on this team, but given the bleakness on this blue line, I think he deserves a chance.
I believe he's in everybody's top 8, and it's him and Danford in some order at 3-4. We could probably get into that right now. Like, who would you rather have as a third pair guy?
And I had Danford at 3, but I submitted this, I think, a week ago. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've wondered whether I should have flipped that and get Verhoff into the starting 6.
I believe that is how Scott has it, right? Verhoff, then Danford.
If Corey flipped Danford and Verhoff, we'd have the exact same 3 pairs at the top there.
Yeah. So an easier conversation there. I think basically that's where we're arriving at, is that it's Dickinson, Parekh, it's Aitchison, Brunicky, it's Verhoff at 3RD. If Chris, are you good with that?
Yeah.
Danford at 4RD, and then it's the conversation still comes back to the left side. Like, I guess that's the ultimate question on this blue line is who's 3 and who is 4. We're ultimately going to have 10 names on this list. Who do we feel good about on the third pair opposite Keaton Verhoff?
I'm for Cameron Reed, just the way he skates.
Me too.
Like there's too many similarities to Tanner Molendick, who they brought as an 18-year-old. Like I think that's the guy.
Okay, let's pencil in Cam Reed there, and then at 4 lefty, who's opposite of Ben Danford? Is it Owen Protz? Is it Xavier Villeneuve? Doesn't sound like you guys are sold on Jackson Smith.
I'd bring Protz, Woolley, or Villeneuve. I don't really care at this point because I feel like there's pretty similar. I mean, not similar talent, because obviously Villeneuve's a high-end offensive talent, but in terms of how I feel about them in the lineup, I'd probably just take Protz. I think that high-end physicality is something that you'd value as a 7th D, and that'd be my argument.
Okay, Chris, what do you think?
Do I have to?
You do.
Oh, man. I guess you guys have talked me into Villeneuve a little bit more.
You guys, there's been one person who's been arguing for it.
Well, he's on your depth chart too. He wasn't on
Yes.
mine. So we're talking about the fourth pair right now.
Yeah, but again, this is a depth chart. So if you lose Dickinson, this guy's all of a sudden in your nightly.
And they can bring 8. And they probably are going to bring both of these guys if we presume that, that's just if one of
I'll amend. Yeah, I'll go with Villeneuve then in the very bottom pairing situation here.
Doesn't sound like Corey's in the mood to protest, so we're gonna slot Villeneuve in at 4 LD, Owen Protz at 5 LD, and then 5 RD. I think is unanimously Charlie Ellick. Corey, you might have had Villeneuve on the right side on your depth chart, but
I did, yes.
I didn't have Ellick, but Ellick is fine as a 5 RD, and you hope that he's not playing more than 12 minutes a night, I think is the...
Well, and ultimately it's a depth chart, right? So the practical is that it's probably not going at all, but just for our purposes, that's the defense chart. Let's move over to the goalies here real quick, because I think it's 2-2. I believe it's Chris and Scott have Carter George. Corey and I have Jack Ivankovic. I'll let you start, Chris, make the case for Carter George.
I think it's experience. I mean, both of them have it, obviously. Both of them have international experience, but I've looked at Carter George and the way that he plays and the way that he approaches the game. And, I think that he has all the tools there except for, tremendous size and things like that. But he's a competitor. He's got high-end hockey sense. He doesn't shrink in the spotlight. I mean, I think it's 1A, 1B situation for them, which is crazy because you've got a first-round goalie that, we're talking about as a number 3. But I think I at this point have a little more faith overall in George, but it's really not a significant difference between him and Ivankovic.
And I had Ivankovic at 1, but I feel the same way. Both are great goalies. Both have been really good in big events. When I've watched them this year, maybe just because I've watched a little bit more Michigan than I have Owen Sound, Ivankovic just looks spectacular this year, quite frankly. Like, he's just been one of the better freshman goalies I can remember. Just because he's Nashville, it's hard not to connect the dots and say, like, man, this guy reminds me a lot of Yusei Saros at the same age. But I love his game. But Carter George, has played with the senior team. He was fantastic at the last year's World Juniors, fantastic at his U18s. He absolutely deserves to start game 1, but I feel like it's going to be a situation where the coach is just going to have to make a last-minute call on who's starting that middle round game.
I do think there's some rhyme in Ivankovic and the guy who won the last 2 gold medals in Trey Augustine. It's very hard for me to erase that from my mind, Scott.
Yeah, I would counter that. I think Carter George was Canada's best player at last year's World Juniors.
Yeah, he was.
And it's pretty hard not to go back to the guy who's your best player. I think to Corey's point, I would be very, very, very surprised if Carter George isn't starting on Boxing Day. Whether that changes, we'll see. Jack Ivankovic only played 1 game last year. He was also excellent in it, and it was a shootout loss to Latvia, unfortunately, but he was very good in it. But George won gold for them at U18 Worlds as well, and was debatably, other than Gavin McKenna, their best player in that game as well. So the track record for both of these kids is pretty hard to contest with, but I think George, based off of how he played at last year's tournament, I think he'll be the guy.
All right, well, with what Corey said, and then obviously your guys' strong feelings, let's go George, Ivankovic, and then Ravensburgen. So that is our Team Canada. We're going to take a quick break right there. We'll come back with Team USA. I promise that will be a quicker discussion. All right, we're back, and let's go now to the Team USA roster debate. This one a little bit easier. It's just a much tighter pool of players that we're talking about. A lot of commonality. Most of the forward mix, I would say, we all have is roughly the same, couple different slottings. Obviously, James Higgins is on there, Teddy Stiga, Brody Ziemer, Max Plant, Will Horkoff, Cole Iserman, Trevor Connolly, Cole McKinney, AJ Spellacy, Shane Vensagi, and Kamil Bednarik, all on just about everybody. I think Scott has him Bednarik on, but outside his top 12. It's a minor disagreement here. The debates are really about a couple key spots, and one of those would be the second line center. Scott, Chris, and I all have Will Horkoff in that spot after how he started at Michigan. Corey, you've got Kamil Bednarik. Why don't you explain kind of what the deliberation was like there for you on your draft list of this depth chart?
I mean, I don't think Horkoff is really a center. Like, I think that he's much better suited for the wing because of his skating. He's got great skill, great goal scoring ability, but I think like Bednarik, he's a hard player, a good skater, a two-way player. Like Horkoff's a way better player. Don't get me wrong. I just don't view him as a center on a World Junior team.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's fair. What I would say though is that there aren't many good centers in this group, and I think that opens the door for a Will Horkoff to potentially play down the middle to allow you to kind of bring some different looks from other players. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, you're right. And this is kind of the story of this team. I think you're putting a lot of different players maybe in not the best position that you could, but it's really, you don't have a lot of other options. Bednarik is one of he was right next, he was the next guy on my list as well. I think that he has plenty of qualities that will allow him to fit there. But I mean, I think that, yeah, USA is in a bit of they just don't have the depth at the center position. They don't have, the other thing is Horkoff has a size advantage, some other things there too. But yeah, I mean, would he be better served on the wing? I'm sure, but I don't know that they have that luxury.
Well, let's get that list of players back up again. It could be any of our depth charts, but the center position for USA as a whole here, after James Hagens, it doesn't really inspire you offensively, right? Like, you have these pretty good offensive wingers, Cole Yzerman, Max Plant, Trevor Connolly. Most of us have Riker Lee. We'll talk about that in a second. I do think there's something to be said for a good two-way defensive guy down the middle doing a lot of that dirty work. USA is going to be hard up to generate offense, I think, down the middle, outside of like a Will Horkoff. That's was my logic. Like Will Horkoff, there's a tried and true recipe for him to create offense around the net. Granting even what Corey said about kind of where is it best for him, I'm wondering like what's best for Team USA here.
It was this was the story of their age group when they were at the U18 level. It was basically just the Hagens line, and Yzerman kind of rotated in and out of it. It's very similar to the Will Smith age group with Perreault and Leonard. And like it's very well could be like a power play that plays, the whole 2 minutes, just to make sure Hagens doesn't get off the ice. I think they're going to score, but I think secondary scoring is going to be a story when they get to the medal round games.
Yeah. Let's talk about Riker Lee, because this is not a team that's necessarily short on skilled wingers, Corey. So I can see why maybe that it wouldn't seem like a priority area. But I think Riker Lee's first half has been really strong. So what was the decision like to leave him off?
For me is I look at the top 9 wingers, and this is where I guess comes down to Horkoff. As Horkoff is a center, it changes the calculus for me a little bit. But I think I look at Stiga, Zimmer, Plant, Yzerman, Horkoff, and Connolly as my top 9 wingers. And I don't think Lee gets in the mix here as a fourth liner. Now, if I was actually making this team, I would take him over LJ Mooney. I don't know that Bob Motzko is going to take him over LJ Mooney, but I would. But I think I love Riker. He's looked really impressive this year. He's super skilled, super creative, can shoot the puck. 5'11" below average skater, though. I feel like if he's not in the top 9, which again, I really practically never even thought about Horkoff as a center. So like just the two of you guys did kind of surprise me a little bit. But anyways, so that would change things a little bit for me. But if Horkoff is on the wing, then I don't really know where Riker fits in this conversation.
Yeah. Scott, you have LJ, speaking of LJ Mooney, like you have him as your 3C.
Yeah, again, to Chris's point, I just don't know who's playing center. Like, I don't want Kamil Bednarik playing with skill guys on a second line and going over the boards for offensive zone draws, which I think you want those lines at the very, very top of your lineup to be doing. So I think LJ can check and do a lot of things that I think people don't give him enough credit for. He's been very good as a center. He played center as an underager for them at U18 Worlds. He's played a lot of the wing recently too. But I think when you're starting to sort of piece together the pieces of the puzzle down the middle, I would rather a Will Horkoff and an LJ Mooney there in the guts of the lineup than I would Kamil Bednarik. Like, I think if you're bringing up Bednarik, it's as a 13th or 14th forward kind of thing. I would say, to Corey's point about Riker Lee, Riker was excellent for them at the World Junior Summer Showcase this summer. Like, I was convinced after having one conversation with Bob Motzko about him in a scrum that he was a big, big fan of Riker. Riker's, I think, got more dog in him than people realize. I think he's shown that in college this year. I think Riker can kind of play more up and down the lineup than people realize. And I would also say Corey's got Jack Murtagh there as a fourth line. Like Jack's not he's a scorer. He's not a checking winger. Like I just don't. I don't
the
think
argument
Jack
for me there was the left shot versus right shot there. I think Riker Lee's a better player than Jack Murtagh. But I really struggled after those first three left wings. I couldn't find another guy I really was passionate about. That was a left shot to put there, to be perfectly honest, unless I'm missing somebody obvious.
That was part of the reason I put Spellacy there.
Same.
And move Spellacy to the wing for that reason.
Yeah,
I just don't think Jack's sniffing this team. Like I don't think he's even in the mix.
All right, so let's kind of try to synthesize some of this. So the first thing we need to settle is who we're putting at 2C here. So Corey, can you be sold on Horkoff at 2C, or that's just like a you don't see it happening thing?
When was the last time he played center? He hasn't played center at Michigan. Didn't play center at the U18 Worlds. So you're talking about like last fall, maybe?
He played it
at the NTDP.
Yeah, he played it at the NTP in the front half of the season before he left.
So he hasn't played center in a year, but he's going to be the second line center at the World Juniors.
Look at the list, Corey. What are we trying to do here?
McKinney's on the same team with him at Michigan. He's the center there.
Well, I just think for the sake of getting the best top 9 that we can, I think the best way to do that is with Will Horkoff at center. So even acknowledging that, yes, like McKinney's the more natural option here, let's put Will Horkoff at 2C. We'll keep Cole McKinney at 3C. For 4C, do you want Bednarik at 4C, or you like Spellacy there, Corey?
I would probably lean towards Bednarik, just the experience with this national team.
Yeah,
that'd be my lean
too.
Then Spellacy kind of be like his run and gun, physical speed guy on the wing.
Yep, and that's kind of Scott and I's point. Like you get him on the fourth line left wing. Like it's a good solution to a depth issue there for Team USA. All right, so I think where we're at then with Team USA is top line. Is everyone good with Teddy Stiga, James Higgins, Brody Ziemer?
Don't think Chris is.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, so I think Teddy Stiga, he started to pick it up a little bit this year. I did not like the way things were looking early on in the season. Very scrambly. The only shot he took at the World Junior Championship was the game-winning goal last year. And he's on the roster. Like he's on my team. I'd have a hard time.
Bob loves him too.
Yeah. And he's got a lot of the qualities, but man, it's tough for me to see him, kind of on that top line situation. In terms of pure depth chart, I think, Connolly and others could potentially give you more just in terms of a pure depth chart. But I mean, he's going to play with Hagen. Like the top line is probably going to be Stiga, Higgins, and Ziemer as the actual top line. It might not look that way on the depth chart.
There's a fun question. If that's actually the top line, who's the center? Because there have been times this year where Stiga's been the center and Higgins has been the wing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll probably end up still being James, but yes,
I don't think I wouldn't even use the word probably. James Higgins was the first line center for last year's team. I don't think it's a conversation.
Let's hope not. But the fact that it's happening on his current team and that we're seeing the results that we're seeing from both of those guys, a little concerning to me.
BC's been a tough watch.
Woo.
Except for Dean Letourneau, he's having a great year.
Look out for the Dean pot. Let's go.
All right, so let's go with Stiga, Higgins, Ziemer. I know some people had Plant, some people had Yzerman on the top line. I think in my projection, I had those as the wingers for Will Horkoff on the second line. How do you guys want to? Do you want to argue for anyone else there? Riker Lee.
I feel like we all have the same top 9 wingers now. If we're putting Horkoff at center, then I think we would all agree what the top 9 wingers are, and it's just a matter of where you're putting them. Essentially,
my thought was Plant the playmaker to just kind of set up Yzerman,
which is what they did they did that with the program too, to varying levels of success. But that was something they've tried before.
Yeah, Plant will be with. I would imagine that Plant's going to be with Yzerman.
And do you want that with Horkoff as a center or with McKinney?
Horkoff.
All right. So then that leaves Trevor Connolly and Riker Lee are the wingers next to Cole McKinney on line 3. And then line 4, I think we decided on Spellacy, Bednarik, and I think unanimous was Shane Vinsagi at fourth line right wing. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that's a good checking line. Like I'll say this.
They're going to play a lot.
We've beaten
imagine.
up USA a little bit this year. I do think that's the exact kind of line that you want checking the Canada line. So that's something they've got going for them. The interesting part here is the depth. And like we talked about, Scott had LJ Mooney pretty high. Cullen Potter, I think, is a name that everyone kind of had somewhere on their list, usually at the bottom. I know this isn't likely, but I felt like we should at least discuss JP Hurlburt leading the Western Hockey League in scoring. Look, for political reasons, I get it. You left the NTDP. You're probably not getting onto the World Junior team in your draft year, but is there any validity to this discussion?
Depends what happens. I think next week when he plays those NTDP teams, if there's any bad blood in those games, perhaps.
I think it's actually in the bylaws now that if you search JP Hurlburt's name in the USA Hockey database, it comes up with files empty. So,
yeah. I will here, Max. I just wanted to put a let's make sure that we understand fully the chances of this happening.
Oh no.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that everybody 0.0% chance, and it is for the reasons that you mentioned. It is the political thing. It is, but at the same time, if you take a player that left the program for and then ignore all those other 22 guys that are still there, it's hard to make that sales pitch to future recruits, I would imagine. So is it fair? No, but would I have him on my team otherwise? No, I wouldn't. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's go to the defense here. And again, this is
I might bring him over Potter if I was really asked
I'm
about
not
it,
bringing Potter. I'm not bringing Potter.
Yeah.
So Chris is bringing 13 forwards to the World Juniors for Team USA. No injuries allowed. Let's go to the defense here now. And there's a lot of unanimity there as well. Everybody's got Cole Hudson. Everybody's got Adam Kleber, EJ Emery, Dakota Rayon Mullen, who I don't think was on our projection in the summer. I believe he's on all four of these lists. So
he wasn't initially invited. He was a late invite due to injury to the summer showcase. He wasn't even initially invited by USA Hockey.
But he was very good there, and he's had an excellent first half. And that's how he becomes a unanimous pick for all of us, as well as Luke Osborne. Different slottings, but this is a good core. I don't know that it's going to wow you. I think Cole Hudson has the potential to be one of the very best defensemen at the World Juniors, but it's all about kind of how you surround this group here. And of the names that we're going to debate here, I don't know that there's anybody who feels amazing. I mean, you're talking about Blake Fidler, Jacob Rombach. Who else got a mention here? Sam Larilla. It's not splashy, but is there anyone who Will Skahan? Anyone want to make an impassioned case for a name they had on their list?
I think Chase Reed, he was my fourth right shot defenseman. They're much deeper on the right side than they are on the left side, so it's tricky. But I think Chase Reed has made a very, very compelling case to, if not be on this team, then at the least be in camp. I think he's one of the best players in the OHL right now and has really even elevated this year beyond how good he was last year immediately. And I think he's a player that they could benefit from bringing into the fold and getting this kind of experience, even if it's as a number 7 or number 8 defenseman. So that was my one where, and you'll notice, I don't have Henry Brustevich or Blake Fidler, 2 first-round picks. I don't have, actually, Fidler was a second-round pick in the end, but I don't have either of those guys on my team. And I think Chase has played his way into that mix for me. I don't know whether he will for NCAA legend Bob Motzko, which I think is what Chris is going to say here. But this was, supposed to, in theory, be our case and our team. And Chase Reed would be firmly in the mix. I'm not sure he's playing in your top 6, but I think he belongs in that 7, 8, 9, 10 conversation for this group.
It'd be quite a change of heart for them to have cut Chase Reed from the U18 World team. He was at the camp. They cut him. They brought him in, saw him, left him home. And then 6 months later, you're bringing him to play for the U20 team ahead of all those guys on that team, including Blake Fidler, who was I think he was their minutes leader at that tournament. So I like Chase Reed a lot. I'd just be surprised if he actually was on this.
And I also, part of the case for Reed for me is that, similar to the conversation we had with Canada, is Luke Osborne going to be running your second power play here? Is that what we're looking at?
I would guess so, yes. But I also kind of say, like I said earlier, I don't think that first power play is getting off the ice. Like I think
they
it's just gonna
shouldn't.
be, yeah, I don't
shouldn't.
care I don't care who's on the second power play. They're not playing.
With the talent you have on the second power play, I don't think that's going to be the case. You could have Riker Lee and Trevor Connolly on.
Well, you know what? You could just potentially just have Cole Hudson play the entire power play and then call it good. But Scott, go ahead.
I think that's a very real possibility. Why not have Cole? I think there's enough talent that you need to get Riker Lee and Trevor Connolly and some of these, because they're going to have Plant and those guys on PP1. They always have.
Yeah.
But I think you want to get those other guys looks and touches and feeling the puck there. So I hadn't actually considered it, but Hudson running both units, I don't think is a terrible idea.
Like that's how I would do it. But and I'll tell you what, Scott, like I think that Chase Reed, if you are going to have an evaluation camp, Chase Reed 100% should be in that camp. And yes, it's, you taking him over like Drew Schock and other guys that were part of your group last year at the under 18s. But I think based on what we've seen from those guys in college and Reed in junior, this is a guy that's playing. He's leading all players in minutes in the OHL, playing around 28 minutes a game. So, this is a real player that you should, this camp, like he should have been there in the summer too.
Yes.
Like I thought for sure he should have been there in the summer. That's what that is for. That is there. I'd rather take more guys that I'm less sure about than guys that I'm really sure about. Like they've done where they've sent the returnees home. This year they didn't do that, but in past years, send the returnees home, give these other guys a look. But I agree. Like to Corey's point, how much of a change of heart are they going to have over that period of time? But
you look at the right shots. Kleber, Emery.
Yeah, he's not going to fit
Hensler.
Hensler. Like he's not on the team. Like he's just not on the team.
He's not. You're right. But
and I think I think Fiddler did nothing to not endear himself to be back after the U18s. Like I think to me he was a fairly easy 4RD.
I thought Fiddler was just okay at U18s, honestly, and he's not having a great year.
He isn't. He's one of the best players on one of the best teams in this WHL right now.
The last few times I've watched Blake, he has fought it.
Yeah, well, his puck plays kind of crap, but I think he's a good defender. But
that's the thing is like, I think right now, like if you're USA though, and you're looking like these are, I have a feeling the debates are much more impassioned and much more banging your head against the wall in the actual USA room. And we haven't even gotten to the one where,
the goalies.
We haven't even gotten to the one where you're just like, uh-oh. So,
well, we'll get there very shortly here. Let's settle on our D here. So I believe we're pretty consensus that Cole Hudson is 1 LD. Split opinions on who's opposite him between those three right defensemen. Anyone have a really strong feeling that it should be Kleber, Emery, or Hensler?
I just think it'll be Emery. I just think it'll be Emery because of the track record
familiarity
program of them as a pair.
Chris?
Yeah, I think EJ is probably going to be on their bottom pairing. Yeah.
All right, so we'll say Kleber for now. Second pair would be, I think are we saying Osborne? Or are we saying Dakota?
I mean,
I honestly think those next 4D, which I presume are going to be Osborne, Emery, Hensler, and Rayon Mullen, you could just do whatever combination you want of those. To be perfectly honest, I think they're pretty similar talent wise.
I think Osborne is probably the second pairing guy over Rayon Mullen.
I agree.
Yeah, and my thought there was to go with Osborne with Emery, just because I think Hensler a little more of the offense too to spread it around. But I think you can kind of go any different way with that.
You get the Wisconsin teammates together too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So then on the fourth pair, I guess we're talking about, did we decide on Fiddler, or what did we decide on there?
I mean, it's a pick 'em. It's a pick 'em, and honestly, it doesn't matter because they're never going to see the ice.
We decided to be very sad.
I wouldn't surprise if Chris or I, if Bob just brought Motzko just brought Rom back, to be quite honest. And
that's the reason I had Rom back as
so
depth guy.
Rombach will be the 4 LD, and it's opposite.
Yeah.
I think we're saying Fiddler at this point.
Yeah.
All right. So the goalies, to Chris's point, when I was putting my projection together, I was like, all right, somebody's got to be off to a hot start. And I went through our projections from the summer, and I did not like what I found. So I left it exactly as we had this summer, which was Nick Kempf, Caleb Heil, and Patrick Quinlan. I know you guys all had slightly differences. I don't think anyone else had Quinlan on this roster. Harrison Bottiger and Cam Hendrickson were the two names that we ended up vying between the three of you. Chris, how do you see this position shaking out for the U.S.?
I mean, I think Kempf is the only option and will be the only option for them as the number one goalie. Caleb Heil is going to the World Junior A Challenge, but he is very much still in the mix and very likely, I think, to be the number two goalie on this team. I put Harrison Bottiger there because he's he won't be, because he wasn't even that at the under 18 Worlds last year. I don't know what happened where, he was their best goalie at the USA CHL Challenge and then really saw playing time dip over the course of the year. But really, it is a, just think of the gap from Trey Augustine and Hampton Slakinski and Jacob Fowler the year before to where we're at now. And listen, it's hard. I don't mean to be mean to these goalies. They are all Kempf is they're legitimate prospects and they're going through it. But the fact of the matter is Cam Hendrickson and Jackson Parsons or Jack Parsons and all the guys that they have brought in to the camp, they've played 2 games. They have not even, they're not their team starter. They're barely their backup at this point. And so this is the pool that you're pulling from. And I was even trying to look outside of is there anybody that we're missing? Is there anybody out there? Who do you got? Do you have one, Scott?
They're not going to be in the mix, but both Minchak and Fedorov have been 2 of the better goalies. I've seen both of them play live already this year. They've been 2 of the better goalies in the OHL, which is why it's ironic that Max had Quinlan on his team, another OHL guy, because he's been, I think he's Sarnia has been a disaster.
He was the starter at U18s last year.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but Minchak has outplayed Gavin Betts in Kingston, and Fedorov's the starter in Ottawa. They're not going to be in this conversation. They've never represented USA hockey.
That is a good pull though.
There
Fedorov
are American
awesome
goalies.
This year.
Yeah, there are American goalies playing well. They're just not the 5 who were in camp. Although Kempf's been decent this year.
Yeah, he's been fine. And I know that they went to look at him again just to kind of see how he's been doing. And it sounds like, he had a good weekend in front of the USA brass. And, it is what it is. I think that it's probably the weakest goaltending crop that I've seen here. I mean, Corey, I was thinking they did have, a few years ago, Caden Mbarico was their starter, but then they did eventually go to Augustine, who was the underager at the time. And went back and forth a little bit. So, there have been times where the goaltending has been a weaker position. Then there have also been years where you didn't really know what they were going to have, like the year Kyle Kaiser was their starter and other things like that. They find a way. You just got to hope that one of those guys is going to have his A game in that setting, because otherwise it's going to be a long tournament.
Or a short tournament.
It's going to take a while. Yeah, in front of the home fans too. So good one.
All right. So here is our Team USA. Not the most inspiring group, but you never know. And then you get into one of these tournaments, I think you're hoping that a team comes together and you can make something happen. And if you get to the knockout round, good things are possible. That is going to do it for us after a long and grueling episode of the Athletic Hockey Show Prospect Series. You can, of course, catch more of Chris over at Flow Hockey and on his podcast Called Up. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.